Welcome to the Dream Nation Breakfast Club, brought to you by Josh Valentine, of course. I am your host, and this Breakfast Club is brought to you also by the Journey Podcast, where we jump on pretty much every single Tuesday morning from 7 a.m. To about 8 to 9 a.m., depending on the Tuesday. But welcome for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time. I know we have people who hop on from different parts of the world. So if you're new to the Breakfast Club, no matter how you were invited, whether someone tagged you or just shared this Breakfast Club with you, welcome. This is pretty much a phenomenal community where we gather together every single week and cover all types of topics centered around personal development, life coaching, and so much more. And always happy to be here with you all. And I know we have people who tune in from different cities around the world. So drop a comment. Let us know what city you are tuning in from this week. And if you're watching the replay, drop an R. Maybe you're listening via the podcast. So if you haven't been on the podcast, jump on. We have tons of phenomenal interviews that I have done over the last, several years with some amazing guests. I actually shot a podcast episode yesterday that I'm excited to release for you guys. But welcome, everyone. Happy to always be here with you all. And we're about to get this show on the road. If you guys don't mind, drop a like, comment, share, tag someone who can get value. I appreciate all of you who share the Breakfast Club every single week. It definitely would not be what it is today if it wasn't for those of you who share it with your communities. So appreciate that. And for those of you who are hopping on, again, for the very first time, and you're like, okay, what is this all about? Stay tuned. We have a really, really great session lined up for you all. And today's topic is going to be centered around stop thinking, start doing, and breaking free from overthinking to execute your dreams. So I know for me and the work that I do, so I'm a holistic life coach for those of you who don't know. And I typically, I hop on television, podcasts, different things like that, social media, and talk about a lot of different concepts around coaching. And one of the things that I've discovered over the years, just working with many people on many different projects, is people tend to have what we refer to in the personal development world as paralysis of overanalysis, where you kind of think yourself out of anything that you're working on. I'm not sure how many of you can relate to that. If you can relate to that, drop a comment. I know I definitely have been there. Where you tend to just overthink things, right? Or maybe you get caught up in being perfect. You get caught up in, just wanting to do everything a certain type of way, and you end up not doing the thing at all. And I know that this is definitely one of the things that people struggle with the most. So I'm excited to share the value here because I know many of you are going to be able to get value from this, especially for those of you who are a bit on the analytical side like myself. I tend to be very analytical, and sometimes it can be my biggest downfall. So let's get ready to jump right into it. Let's see here. We have some shares that we're going to open up with before we jump into the meat and potatoes of today's Breakfast Club session. So to get us kickstarted, the very first share is Cultivate an Abundance Mentality. And this is from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Really great book, by the way. And this flashcard, it says, describe what you could do to think more abundantly, celebrate the strengths of yourself and others, stop comparing, and share resources. So really good. So celebrate the strengths of yourself and others, stop comparing, and share resources. I know for me, transitioning into a more abundant mentality, when I was growing up, we didn't have a whole bunch, I mean, we had a lot of love, but in terms of wealth, I didn't come from a family of wealth. We grew up in the hood. And one of the things that, tend to, or I guess a mindset that I would tend to take on was a mindset of scarcity, like always kind of being in survival in a sense, or accustomed to being in survival. And I adopted a scarcity mentality over the years. And it took a long time to finally get a grip on the understanding of just abundant thinking, because abundant thinking, sometimes it doesn't seem like a logical way of thinking. Sometimes logically we're thinking, okay, let me save money here. Let me, do whatever it is that I can to prevent me losing more money or whatever. Like, and abundant thinking is like kind of the opposite of logical thinking, in the sense that logically, yeah, it makes sense to just, let's say, save for a rainy day, or to make sure that you're not overspending. But one of the things that has helped me has been just transitioning my mindset to, there is enough, and if I want it, I'm going to have it. And one of the things that does is, when you transition into abundance thinking, you tend to elevate your standards for your life. You tend to elevate your paradigm, if you will, where there's a saying that luxuries become necessities, right? So if you're always in scarcity thinking, like, let's just say you live in a community that is not the best community, and you're just there because you want to save money on rent, you could very well, because of scarcity thinking, trap yourself into just that paradigm and that way of living, and always being fearful of taking that great leap or elevating your family's social status or quality of life or things like that. So it is important to adopt this abundance thinking, right? It's the kind of like in alignment with what we're going to be talking about here today, which is centered around overthinking, because overthinking is oftentimes something that people who are hyper analytical kind of go through, right? So if you tend to be a little bit on the analytical side, then logically speaking, you're like, okay, well, let me get the more affordable place to live. Let me get the more affordable vehicle. But if you go on your entire life just fearful of not having enough, like, how are you ever really going to stretch yourself? And there's a fine line, right? Because on one side of the spectrum, you want to be responsible, you want to be a good steward of your wealth. But on the other side of the spectrum, it's like sometimes you have to push yourself, you have to stretch yourself. You have to be the one to take that great leap of faith. And it's interesting, because for those of you who are entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship sometimes is not something that you have to, or something that you should do very logically, in a sense, because there are a lot of things in entrepreneurship that, logically speaking, does not make sense. So for example, if you have an intuition, if you have a gut instinct that tells you, like, you know what, I have a strong belief that this is going to work, my gut is telling me that this is going to happen, and you follow through on your gut instinct, oftentimes your gut will lead you to the best result. Not all the time, but a lot of times it does. And there have been countless cases of tons of entrepreneurs who they kind of gone through very difficult seasons, and logically speaking, it made sense to not continue forward, but they still did, and they overcame whatever it is that they were going through. And I know for me, for example, when I was considering leaving the workforce, like, I left my 6-figure career with benefits, pension, all of that stuff, to pursue a business that was not even paying me $500 a month. Logically speaking, it made no sense. Like, I spent all this time going to college, getting my degrees, getting a Coast Guard license, getting all this stuff, and going through this entire program to pilot vessels, all around the United States. I had a highly paid skill, and spent all of this time. It probably was about 6 years of my life to get to this arrival point where I'm now in a position where I'm making up to $1,000 a day at the time. And I had the security, I had everything already set up, and a job that would always be in demand. And I went the path of entrepreneurship, right? And it not only did I go the path of entrepreneurship, I didn't even have like a steady income that was anywhere near what I was making. It took years for me to even replace that income. You understand? So logically speaking, it made no sense. But when it comes to your dreams, sometimes it's not so logical. It's head and heart. It's a combination of the two. You can't just think everything logically all the time. And sometimes you have to put your heart over the bar. You have to wear your heart on your sleeve. You have to go out there and and follow your instincts. And instincts are a very, very important factor when it comes to just going after your dreams. Sometimes it's more feeling than it is thinking. So ask yourself, do I truly believe that there is more than enough for everyone? When we have an abundance mentality, we are not threatened by others' success because we are secure in our own self-worth. This is super, super important. I always mention here on the Breakfast Club that one of the things that I love about my closest friends is they all have their own thing going on. Like my friends, they all do pretty well for themselves. Like my core set of friends, they're project managers in Manhattan, engineers. I have friends that run big companies and all of this stuff in really, really amazing positions. And they're running their own lane. There's no like competition. Everybody's kind of got their own thing going on. And I love that. I feel like relationships thrive when there isn't that underlying jealousy, right? When you really genuinely want the best for your friends and you're comfortable in your own skin and you're pursuing your own path. Okay, so here's a great quote by Stephen Covey. And that is, the abundance mentality flows out of a deep inner sense of personal worth and security. It is the paradigm that there is plenty out there and enough for everybody. It's interesting because sometimes you have people who feel as if, well, if this person wins, then that means I lose. Or if this person succeeds, that means that there's less for me. And oftentimes it's just not the case. Like there is more than enough for everyone. There's more than enough for all people in whatever field that you're in. And it is important to make sure that you're always adopting this abundance mentality, because if you don't, you're going to drive yourself crazy looking at everybody on social media and you're seeing everybody winning or maybe posting up their highlights, because let's be honest, people don't really post the negative aspects of their lives. And you're seeing people winning and you have these insecurities that start to pop up like, man, everybody's getting it but me. You understand? And that's what scarcity will do to you. But you have to have the mentality where, man, if they can do it, I can do it. A me too mentality. Well, you can do it. Well, me too. I can do it as well. If anything, it goes from jealousy to inspiration. You can look at people who are succeeding and you've got the right mindset when you can see people winning in life and genuinely be inspired. Genuinely be like, you know what? That's incredible. That like they're paving the way for people like me, showing what's possible. That should always be the mentality. Okay, so root people on, cheer people on. Like it's interesting too, because sometimes what happens is you have these little insecurities that'll pop up from time to time. Even for myself, I'll have these feelings of like underlying, and I don't even want to call it jealousy, but like sometimes that little boy, that little girl, just feels less than. It feels like they're not enough because they see other people who are doing better than them. And whenever that pops up, like I always have to do my part in silencing that voice. And like if I see someone, for example, posting on social media and they hit a huge milestone, I intentionally will like and comment on them, especially during those moments where that little voice starts to creep in and try to tell me that I'm not enough or tell me that I'm not doing enough. We're all like running our own race here. And it is important to run your own race. Don't try to like get up in someone else's lane. Run your own race, because remember, sometimes that person's chapter 20 is like your chapter 5. And you don't know what they had to go through. You don't know the underlying work that they had to do in order to get to where they are. You can't be upset with the results that you're not getting for the work that you didn't do. So it is essential to always have that perspective. Like, for example, there are a lot of things that I'm limited on today because the reality is I'm a whole dad. I'm a husband, right? I've got 3 children that I'm responsible for. And yeah, I'd love to be out there just traveling all the time and living my best life and being wild and free. But the truth is I'm responsible for other people, right? Like my wife, she homeschools, and she's not out there working the 9 to 5 grind, and I always have to do my part to make sure that my family is good. And because of that, it's like, yeah, there's certain things that I'm not moving as fast with. I'd love for my podcast to be even bigger than it is, and my platforms to be bigger than they are, but I'm in my dad season, and that's fine. So it would be insane for me to compare myself to the 28-year-old dude that's out there getting it, like, balls to the wall, putting in 80-hour weeks. And imagine if I compared myself to that, right? Or that person compared themselves to me. You understand? It's just like, we all have different lives. We all have different starting points. We all have just maybe certain things like grace that was bestowed upon you. Maybe you were born with the silver spoon in your mouth. Maybe you weren't, right? But you have to honor your journey, and wherever it is that you are, and understand that you may be 35, 40, 45, even 50 years old, and feeling like you wasted all this time. But that's actually not the case. There's been a lot of valuable life experiences that you've gotten along the way, and all those valuable life experiences, understand that you can end up having those life experiences come back full circle years later, and you had no idea how the dots were going to connect until life just ended up happening, and you're like, oh, I get it now. I get it. Right? All of those years that I thought I wasted, actually, that wasn't the case. Today, you may have patience because of all the time that it took. So it is, again, essential to honor your journey and understand that your breakaway success, it can happen in a year. It can happen in a year. And then it all of a sudden is called an overnight success, but people don't realize the years and years you spent just cultivating your leadership, cultivating your competence, and so much more. Okay. So next we have another share, and it's if love, success, or integrity are important to you, then they are part of your values system. A value is an emotional state you feel is very important, either to experience because of the pleasure you believe it will bring, or to avoid because of the pain you associate to it. All our decision making is driven by these beliefs. How will a given action help us move toward a pleasure value? Will it help us avoid or move away from a pain value? What's one of the most important pleasurable emotions you value, and what's a painful emotion you'll do almost anything to avoid? And this is really good, because think about like your journey. Think about how many times you probably did not pursue that endeavor simply because you were so consumed about what other people would think. You were so caught up in being judged, being criticized, and you never pursued that dream. And perhaps it's because you value maybe security, you value being accepted. And that's the very thing that's sabotaging whatever it is that you want. So it is important to do those, to have that self inventory, if you will. Do that self inventory where you're kind of analyzing, okay, what is it that I value? Maybe you value feeling significant, and a lot of what drives you is feeling significant. Or maybe you value contribution, you value service to other people. So these are all a part of your value system. And what is it that's driving you? And also, you have push motivations, you have pull motivations. Sometimes the pain of going through rejection is the very thing that drives you. Sometimes it's the pain of not having enough, or the pain of poverty, the pain or the fear of not being able to afford to pay your home or your vehicle, right? These are things that drive us as human beings. But it is important to analyze whether or not that pain or that push or that pull value is actually sabotaging what it is that you truly want. Because imagine, for example, you want to pursue a path of being an actor, and you have this aspiration to be an actor, but you also fear rejection. Imagine fearing rejection, but you also want to be an actor. They're like they're conflicting values in a sense, right? Because one of your values is doing everything in your power to ensure that you don't have to go through rejection and be accepted, but then you also value wanting to become an actor, right? And they're conflicting. So that's why it is essential to always go through some of the things that you're valuing and determine whether or not those values are holding you back. Next, pleasure values are known as moving toward values. They include such emotions as love, joy, freedom, security, passion, and peace of mind. Pain values like rejection, depression, loneliness are known as moving away from values. As we make decisions, we consider whether these pain or pleasure states will be a consequence of our actions. In the next few days, you'll begin to clarify not only the emotional states that drive all of your decisions, but also their order of importance. For example, you may value both security and adventure. Determining which one is more important to you will help you be much more effective in making decisions consistent with what will give you long-term happiness. So one of the things that I think about is like I've valued a lot over the years just having variety in my life and value travel. One thing that I always felt about travel was that it would never travel, investing in experiences like travel. I was never going to regret the money that I spent on travel. And for whatever reason, I adopted this mentality very, very young, and it has served me well, and it has proven me right over and over and over again. I mean, would you guys agree? Like, whenever you invest money in travel and experiencing new experiences, like it's one of the best things you could possibly spend money on. You may regret spending money on that bag or spending money on just that overpriced vehicle that you buy, but you will not regret a trip to Italy. You will not regret a trip to Thailand or these places, because these are beautiful memories. Like when I reflect back on my year, for example, the memory that sticks out the most this year in particular was my trip to Portugal and Spain with my wife. And I was just talking to a friend of mine about this. Like last year, if you ask me what was the highlight of last year, it was going to, where did we go? I think Africa. I went to Africa with my kids, South Africa and Zimbabwe. If you asked me the year before, it was going to Thailand. If you asked me the year before that, it was going to Peru. And the year before that, it was doing a solo trip all around the world. And it's like, these are the memories that you hold dear to your heart. And it doesn't always have to be travel. Maybe it's a camping trip locally, right? But unique experiences and investing in those experiences. It's like you can get the big old house, but honestly, think about this. Think about all of the people you admire in this lifetime. Think about all the celebrities you probably admire, or maybe they're athletes that you absolutely love. Now, think about those people's homes and their vehicles. I would say that it's safe to say that 90% of the people you admire, you don't even know what their home looked like. You don't know what their vehicle looked like. That stuff did not even matter. You don't know all of their possessions or anything like that, right? You have no idea, because that stuff is not as important as we think it is. It's more about the experiences that you develop. So it is essential to always reflect on that, right? And that's not something that you can logically quantify. So for those of you folks who are analytical, again, logically speaking, you may say like, well, I don't want to spend money on that trip to Turkey because I want to make sure that I budget. I want to make sure that I have enough to pay the bills. And I know people that legit will spend that money going to Turkey and then go broke, and they still never regret it. Like they still have no regrets. And it's like, okay, if you had to really judge, whose life would you have rather lived? Like, let's say the person that was always paying their bills on time, always making sure that they're caught up with the IRS and everything like that. And they never travel, they never go out there and spend money on things that are like super valuable in terms of experiences, but the bills are paid on time, right? Or would you rather go with the person that maybe their bills weren't always paid on time, but they've traveled all around the world and created peak life experiences with their loved ones, and they took chances, and you know what? They'll die with the they will not die with the things that the regrets of the things that they didn't do, right? Like, whereas the person that is just always clinging to security and comfort, it's like, imagine at the tail end of their life, how many regrets on the things that they never took a chance on because they were so just overthinking everything logically. And I know I've been guilty of this, especially as an analytical person. So today's session is going to be super valuable for those of you who tend to kind of fall in this category. You've got to take a chance, man. Like, for those of you who have dreams and goals and aspirations, and I get it. It's like, we all want security. We all want peace of mind, right? But do not go out with regret, because there are tons of studies like the 5 regrets of the dying. You guys should look it up online. Look up the 5 regrets of the dying. It's the 5 most common things that people on their deathbed, they did a study on this, but it's the 5 most common things that people typically regret. And usually it's the chances they didn't take or not living up to their potential. Like, don't go out like that because you're so caught up in clinging to security. And I know it's easier said than done, but I'm telling you from personal experience. Like, today, it's interesting because sometimes people, they'll come, they'll see our lifestyle, and whether it's us homeschooling our kids or us being able to travel around the world and not have to come home, or staying up as late as we want to stay up and know where to be in the morning. But that came with a price. That came with taking a chance. And yeah, you have your ups and your downs, your peaks and your valleys and all of this stuff that comes along the way. But when it's all said and done, at least you have the dignity in saying that you took a chance, right? Even if it doesn't work out, like, okay, most of you guys live in the Western world where you can bounce back, but at least take a chance. Okay. Now, if that chance is putting your family in danger, right, in terms of your family security, sometimes you have to move a little different. Sometimes you have to work full time on your job and part time on your dream. Sometimes you have to do the 9 to 5 on your job and the 5 to 9 on your dream. And that's what it looks like. And you have to go overtime, right? But you work with what you got. And there have been countless scenarios of people over the years who have done extremely well with taking that approach. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump into it. Now, here's my question to you. How many times have you had an idea, a dream or a goal, but never acted because you talked yourself out of it? Drop a Y in the comments if that's ever happened to you. Like, I know a lot of people, for example, that I mentor. By the way, I have a few slots open for my coaching on, like, if you're looking to launch a podcast, you're looking to get into the coaching, consulting, speaking space. I mentor people all throughout the year. I have a certain limited amount of spots that I can open up, with my schedule to do these types of programs. So if that interests you at all and you have any questions regarding that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Just hit me up, DM me the word coach, and I could always send you some more information on how that works. I have tons of people that tune into the Breakfast Club that I've certified over the years, different coaches, and people who just wanted to, like, get into public speaking, all that good stuff. But I wanted to bring that up because I have so many people, for example, that I've consulted on launching a podcast. I've consulted with, getting a book underway. And a lot of them come to me because they've been having paralysis of overanalysis and they don't execute. So they'll get the coaching for the accountability. And I have tons of people that I've encountered over the years that they just overthink it. They want everything to be perfect, and understand that perfectionism is the enemy to execution. If you are someone that feels like everything has to be perfect, you are going to struggle with execution. And I get it. Of course, it would be amazing to have everything world class. It would be amazing to have it all perfect. But listen, not at the expense of execution, not at the expense. So when I first started the Breakfast Club, for example, like you guys probably see all the fancy stuff going on, but when I started the Breakfast Club, honestly, it was scrappy as hell. It was scrappy, but people loved it. They loved it. I didn't have a fancy camera setup or fancy lighting setup or nice little aesthetics or anything like that. It was just super scrappy, and sometimes I even cringe looking back at some of those Breakfast Club sessions. Like, I can't believe I went in front of that camera looking like that. But during that time, when I first transitioned to Breakfast Club right before the pandemic online, man, it was just super just like, hey, let's just get the value out there. I wasn't caught up in the way that I looked or the way that I presented myself or anything like that. And the most important thing, though, is that I started and I was consistent every single week, just consistent. I always put out the content, and that is ultimately what led to my podcast, right? And was my podcast perfect? Is it still perfect? Absolutely not. But you know what? It's consistent and it's out there, and it's all about the value. That's really what it comes down to. I'd much rather just be out there putting out the content, putting out the value, than to just be waiting till everything is right, everything is perfect. Because here's the truth: the odds of everything being perfect are slim to none. It's never going to be completely right. It's never going to be a completely 100%. Even when I when I first became a dad, I reached out to my stepfather and I'm like, man, like, how do I do this? Because I didn't really like read the books. I had no idea like how to go about being a dad, but you just kind of learn as you go. You learn as you go. And that's the case with even business sometimes. Sometimes it is important to just take that leap of faith and grow your wings on the way down. So moving forward, we have by the end of this, by the way, I'm going to give you guys practical strategies, so you're not overthinking all the time, and you can start executing on whatever it is that you're working on. So make sure you're taking notes. And you guys hear me say this all the time, that note takers are money makers, and the weakest ink is stronger than the strongest memory. Take notes as if you're going to have to teach this information. And it's mind-boggling to me how many people want to be successful so bad, but they cannot take the time to take notes. It's like counterintuitive. You're sabotaging your own dreams because you're not willing to just go the extra mile. It's like, which student is going to get the most value in the classroom? Is it the student in the back, just like kind of hearing the words of the professor, or like, is it the one up front, just glued in, locked in, taking the notes, really doing their best to process everything? So whenever like you're getting value or mentorship or coaching or anything like that, be very, very diligent with taking notes. I had spoke to a group of young men recently, and I noticed that they were all just kind of circled around me and just listening. And the first thing I mentioned is just like, you guys take notes. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, take notes. You're locked in to someone who is very successful, and you have the opportunity to learn from them. And also, you have an opportunity to leave a really good first impression. What if I was willing to hire one of them as an intern, or bring them onto my company? Do you think I'm going to go with the kids that aren't taking notes? No, I'm going to go to the one that's locked in, that's dialed in, that's hungry for success. Right. So that's what it's about. In the world of personal development, it's one thing to just tune in and listen in, but it's another thing to really, really integrate and assimilate the knowledge that you're learning. Okay. So next, understanding overthinking. Understanding overthinking. Define overthinking in the first place, right? Like, how do you define overthinking? So as I mentioned earlier, paralysis of overanalysis, right? Looping thoughts, just constantly thinking the same thoughts, fear-based thinking disguised as quote unquote planning. One of my clients is a fashion designer. And when I first started working with him, he was just caught up in the designs and like for years, just wasn't putting out his work because he was just so caught up in it. And sometimes just having someone to give you that extra insight, having someone to help coach you through the process is all that you need. Okay. And sometimes you have blind spots that you're not even aware of, right? You don't even realize you're caught up in paralysis of overanalysis. Okay. Sometimes you think that planning is part of the work. You think that you're putting in work just by planning or just by researching. And a lot of my clients, I see this all the time. Like, how did this week go? Yeah, I'm just kind of looking things up, and research is cool, but again, not at the expense of never like taking action. Like you have to put in the work. You have to complement it with it. I remember one of my coaches, I worked with this ontological life coach years ago, and she had highlighted to me that I was hiding behind my personal development. And boy, was she right. She was right. Like I would go hours and hours reading the books, listening to the audios, because I was really fearful of just going through the rejection, doing the things that I really, really needed to do to move the needle for the results that I wanted. Okay, so this is super important to understand. Now, break down why you even overthink in the first place. I'll give you some of the reasons why. Number one, fear of failure. Let's just call it for what it is. You are fearful of, you're not fearful of pursuing that dream. You're fearful of what other people are going to think if you fail. Oftentimes, that's really what it is. It's not the dream itself. Chances are you embarked on that dream because you love what it is that you're doing. But really what's holding you back is the fear of failure and the fear of what is everybody going to think if I don't succeed? And that'll be one of the biggest things that hold you back. Man, if you, one of my favorite questions when people interview highly successful people is, if you could do it all over again, what would you do? What would you do? Because I always think about that. Like if I could have done anything over. And one of my best responses or one of the responses that I definitely agree with, and I know it's the case for me, is I would have gotten over what people thought of me a lot sooner. So for example, the first couple of years of launching the Breakfast Club online, I did not go public with it. It wasn't on publicly like it is today because I was just fearful of like other people trolling me. I'd look at celebrity posts and like the comments were just like, wow, like people are going in, right? And it's interesting. I had put up a post recently, and the post, like, I didn't provide a full amount of context or go down like explanations of what it was that I was saying. And people completely took everything out of context and were going in on the comments. And if it were a few years ago, I would have been crushed by that. Like, honestly, it would have crushed me because it would have been like, oh my God, because I was so caught up on the approval. I was actually kind of fascinated about it. Like, man, there's still that part of me that it's like annoying, but there also is that understanding that this is part of the process. If you're going to be someone of influence, just know that you're going to be criticized. There are going to be people who say things. If you have posts, for example, go viral, right? And in the case of this post, like it started to go viral and I'm getting all these comments and everything like that. And, and I had to remind myself like, hey, this just comes with the territory. Right? There's no getting around that. If you want to be a person of influence, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is what I heard from my mentor years ago. He said, if you want to be admired by thousands, you must be willing to take ridicule from a few dozen ignorant ones. It's just the way it is. You want to be admired by thousands, you have to be willing to take ridicule from a few dozen ignorant ones. Yeah, you're going to have people who troll your stuff. You're going to have people who say things, but that's okay. That's a part of the game. So perspective will take you a long way. It is important to have the right perspective whenever you're pursuing whatever it is that you're going for. Number two is, again, fear of judgment. So just what I was talking about. You're fearful of being judged. Sometimes it's like you're fearful of being judged by your own family, by your parents. What are my parents are gonna think? Yesterday, I was interviewing a master barber. He's a serial entrepreneur, runs many different businesses, and he had mentioned that his mom wanted him to be like a doctor and go off to college. And when he told her that he was going to drop out of college and pursue a career in barbering, like, she was super upset initially with him, but he intentionally had his pay stubs, or not his pay stubs, but like his bank statements going to the house, and like she could actually see how much money he was making. And and then that kind of like lit the light bulb, like, wow, he actually is doing, quite well for himself. And eventually he ended up opening up a really, really beautiful barber, probably the nicest barbershop I've ever been to, downtown Tampa, and a lot of other businesses around it. And has he mentioned that when he started to show his family how he was showing up for his children, he has 5 children, and what they respected is like how well he just took care of his family. And you got to respect it. And initially you may be fearful of the judgment of, what is my family going to think? What are my friends going to think? But at the end of the day, if you're taking care of business, you're taking care of your family, and you're genuinely happy. Like, imagine being a doctor, right? And your parents wanted you to do that. And now you're working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks and you're miserable, right? Like, is that really the path that you want? It's much better to do something that you're genuinely happy with, but as long as you're able to sustain yourself, that's the important thing. Next, we have desire for perfection. As I mentioned earlier, perfectionism is the enemy to execution. So don't get caught up in that. Even if your work is like a 7 out of 10, listen, you could always improve as you go. There's still a lot of aspects of my podcast, still a lot of aspects of our live events, aspects of the Breakfast Club, all of these things that have to be worked on. But honestly, it's like, it is what it is. Sometimes you have to understand that when you're too perfect, a lot of people won't be able to relate to you. You think that being super perfect is the way to go. Like I remember when I was working on my vocabulary, working on just the way that I spoke, and I started to feel out of touch after a while, like, because I was so caught up in sounding like a scholar, but the average person didn't talk like that. The people that I led did not necessarily talk like that. And it was okay to just be myself and not feel like I have to be super, super polished. And sometimes I have to go back to that. Like, Josh, you don't have to use like all of these big words. Keep it simple, because you're not relatable when you're using all of these like sophisticated words. Now, are there moments where you may have to code switch? Maybe you're in different environments. Maybe it is appropriate to use different types of words. Yeah. But understand that, again, if you're too perfect, too polished, people are not necessarily going to rock with you like that. Like I remember I oftentimes share the story that I was in this speaking competition, and it was like America's Got Talent, but for like the best speakers in the United States. And I remember one of the judges mentioning that if you sound like you're too perfect, right, people are going to hate you. Like, straight up, that's what the judge said. Like, they're not going to like you at all. You're not going to get voted for by the people, because it's like you're not relatable. You're out of touch. Okay, so it can actually work against you if you're so caught up with perfectionism. So never forget that. Next, we have information overload. So maybe you have too much going on. You're doing the most. And maybe you have too many podcasts, YouTube videos, books, advice, everything. And it's information overload. And that's what's causing you to have paralysis of overanalysis. You have to scale down. You have to simplify, right? So if you're in the process, like you want to do a podcast, you want to write a book, you want to launch these online courses, you want to do this and build a community and all of this stuff, listen, start with one thing at a time. Because a confused mind does nothing. As the Chinese proverb states, the man that chases multiple rabbits catches none. Do not be that person trying to do everything all at the same time and you end up mastering nothing. Okay, so if you want to launch a podcast, dedicate a season just to the podcast. If you want to launch a book, dedicate a season just to the book. Now, are there people who can do things simultaneously? Absolutely. But know thyself. If that's not the case for you, take it one project at a time. Okay. Now, also know that there's an illusion of safety. Okay, so the brain will trick you into thinking that not acting will actually keep you safe when it really keeps you stuck. So sometimes people feel like, well, if I don't pull the trigger on this, like at least I know I'm safe. No, sometimes inaction is even worse than action or taking that chance. Sometimes inaction, like you think it's inaction, but inaction is also inaction. You deciding consciously not to do anything. Listen, the world is not going to wait on you. That comes with consequences. So don't think that not acting is the way. Even if you have to take a very, very small step, it's still an inch closer to the goal line. Do something. Just keep yourself in motion. Okay. Now, always remember that the most successful people in the world have acted without knowing everything. Have acted without knowing everything. When Elon Musk was starting SpaceX, he didn't know everything about rockets. He like literally had to start learning about rocket science from scratch, right? The same with Tesla, the same with every company that he's launched. It's like he had to learn new things. I had no idea how podcasting works, but I went out there, I did the research, I learned the business of it and everything like that. So you have to remember that, like, everybody who has worked on something great, they were okay with starting, right? Like the old cliche saying, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And it's okay that you don't know everything, but you just kind of learn as you go. Now, the cost of overthinking. This is a whole other rabbit hole that we can go down. By the way, if you're getting value so far, drop a V in the comments. All of your comments help, of course. So drop a V if you're getting value so far. Shout out to everybody tuning in on YouTube. I see we got Instagram as well. Facebook, we post a recording, so we're not live on Facebook. But if you guys ever want to hop on live, just hop over to dnbreakfastclub.com. Okay, so here we go. Next, we have here. All right. We have the cost. Okay, so the cost of overthinking. The first thing, and I love this one in particular, and that is missed opportunity. So remember, some of your dreams are time sensitive. You don't have the luxury of waiting out. You're going to miss the boat. And you have to be very mindful of that. It's like right now, for example, you may want to launch a podcast, right? And just know that podcasting is hot right now, but is it always going to be hot? Maybe not. Maybe not. You have no idea. Like AI right now is booming. And don't think that you can just wait 5 years from now to start embarking on AI. Like learn how artificial intelligence works. Learn how all of these different things work. Like there are certain things that are very time sensitive. Now, maybe you're wanting to write a book and perhaps like it's not a time sensitive thing on the book, but maybe it is. Maybe there are certain things that you're not actually seeing. And when it comes to business follows trends. There's trends, there's cyclical, there's a cyclical nature to business, and you have to be able to identify trends. You have to be able to identify when it is the right time to take massive action. But do not miss opportunities because you're just sitting there just overthinking everything. Okay, when that idea is hot and the emotion is strong, that's when you should take action. Next, the other cost of overthinking is mental exhaustion. So isn't it crazy? There are people that get burnout. Now, if you're the person that's gonna encounter burnout, don't encounter burnout due to inaction. Like encountering burnout due to inaction is so much worse than encountering burnout because of action. Because at least if you're going through burnout, I was watching an interview by Mr. Beast, who's the #1 YouTuber in the world, and he spoke about just like his work life and how he goes so hard. Like he's constantly working on different projects and putting in these ridiculous hours every single week. And eventually he gets to a point of just all out like exhaustion, just burnt out. And he'll need like a day just to recover. And then he's back at it, right? But he's also massively successful. But you have people on the other side of the spectrum where they'll burn out and they're not even putting in any work. They're just overthinking everything. And then they burn out just from the process of overthinking. And then they're left with regret. They're left with guilt, right? So don't be that person. Now, another cost is, regret versus failure. So remember this, failure gives lessons, but regret gives nothing. Failure gives lessons, but regret gives nothing. So that's why it is so much better to just swing the damn bat. At least you got in the game. Even if you strike out, you still got in the game, and you will never have that regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Next, remember, people on their deathbeds regret what they didn't do more than what they did do. More than what they did do. Okay? There are countless stories of people who waited too long and missed their shot, right? And they didn't take action when the time was right. So a prime example of this would be the company Kodak. You guys probably remember Kodak. And we all used Kodak back in the day for like photography. And do you know that Kodak was just denying this whole digital era that we were going in? And they took too long to adopt the trend and end up having to file bankruptcy. How many of you see Kodak today? It was one of the most admired companies, one of the largest companies in the world, but they waited. They did not take action when the time was right, and they paid the price in a major way. And this happens at the individual level. It happens at the organizational level. So it is essential to make sure that you're taking action, especially when the time is right. Now, shifting the mindset. So one of the things that you want to do is reframe failure. So a lot of you are looking at it as failure and you're all caught up on trying to avoid it. But remember, failure equals data, not identity. I'll say that again for those of you in the back of the classroom. Failure equals data, not identity. So what do I mean by that? Whenever you fail, you're learning. Like you want to fail forward, and it's not really failure. I was watching an interview this week with Tyler Perry, and he had mentioned to these group of guys that he never failed in his life. And initially, these guys were like, "What do you mean you never failed?" Right? And it's like, yeah, because everything was a lesson. Everything that he thought he failed at in the moment led to something even better, or he learned something along the way. He got some kind of value out of it. So it is essential to reframe the way you perceive failure. Okay. Another thing is to embrace imperfection. So it's one thing to always want to be perfect, but imagine if you can be okay with being perfectly imperfect. Like that's really what it comes down to. Being perfectly imperfect, being okay with your imperfections. Remember, done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. Would you rather have a book that has the potential of being perfect or a book that's actually out? Maybe it's not perfect, but you actually have a book, right? Or like, who would want to be there just stuck and never putting out the book, never putting out the podcast, never putting out that course, never putting out whatever it is that you're working on because you want it to all be perfect? Be okay with the imperfections. Like I've had to embrace this in a major way. Sometimes I've had like life mastery events that I've had, live webinars, things like that. Even events that just everything wasn't completely, dialed in. But at the end of the day, it happened. And it's so much better that it actually got done than to have been caught up and just trying to make everything right. Now, this is not to negate the fact that you should always do your best to be as world-class as possible, right? But not at the expense of inactivity. Now, next we have trust the process. Clarity comes from action, not thinking. So sometimes you think that thinking things through is going to give you clarity. No, sometimes it's taking the action is what actually gives you clarity. You kind of learn as you go, you course correct, and you make those adjustments as you go. Now, I love this 80% rule. I'll share it with you guys. Take notes. If you feel 80% ready, move. If you feel 80% ready, move. Some of you are waiting to be at 100%. I mean, the moment you feel about 80% ready, you definitely you've reached the limit. Go for it, okay? Because you'll learn the other 20% along the way. You'll learn it along the way. 80% is enough to say, hey, let's go. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be 80. I mean, you could pull it off at 60, 70. But when you hit about 80, just go and make things happen. So the idea is action is the antidote to fear. Sometimes when you just get the ball rolling, like that's how you overcome the fear. Because what tends to happen is if you're constantly overthinking everything, you're actually making yourself more fearful. You're thinking of all the reasons why it won't work. But when was the last time you actually took the time to think about all the reasons why it will? Why it will? And I have to catch myself sometimes because I'll start going down the rabbit hole of why something won't work and not really putting enough consciousness and focus and attention on all the reasons why it can. Okay, so here's some practical tools to stop overthinking. First and foremost, we have the 2-minute rule. I talk about this all the time. And it's inspired by James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits. And basically the 2-minute rule is this. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Do it immediately. Maybe it's picking up that phone and making that call, right? Maybe it's booking that meeting, whatever it is. But if it takes less than 2 minutes, you should do it because that's what builds momentum. Sometimes it's just taking that little action, that micro goal. Okay, next we have set deadlines. Time-bound goals kill overthinking. So when you set those deadlines, and that's oftentimes what I do with clients. If I'm working with a client, what I'll do is I'll set a micro goal for the week. And if they don't follow through on that micro goal, then there's a fine associated with not following through. So you want to set deadlines, okay? Because the deadlines, it makes you just take action and go hard and want to get things done at a specific time. And this is why many of your jobs, a lot of people who work jobs typically have some kind of deadline to different projects that they're working on because that's how you get things done. Okay. Now, limit input. So only consume info that leads to direct action steps. Limit the input. Sometimes you're just inundated with too much information. It's information overload. You have too many people in your ear. Sometimes it's just good to, again, scale down what it is that you are consuming. We also have decision filters. So ask, will this move me closer to my dream? Everything that you do, ask yourself, is it moving me closer or is it taking me further? So for example, if part of your dream is saving up for that new home or saving up for that new vehicle or saving up for that vacation, but you're about to go blow money in the club, is it moving you closer to your dream? Absolutely not. So why would you engage on it or engage in it? And that's why oftentimes we share one of my favorite philosophies is if it ain't a hell yes, it should be a hell no. If you're thinking whether or not like, hey, is this really what I wanted to list? Just don't do it. Don't do it because it's not moving you closer to where you want to be. Another thing is to break it down. Break it down. So convert big goals into micro steps. Win the day, not the decade. Don't get caught up on the decade or even the month. Just focus on winning the day. What are things that you can do today that can get you closer to where you want to be? Next, we have an accountability partner. External push eliminates the overthinking cycle. Sometimes you just need that person in your corner to help you, right? Because they're there to hold you accountable. Like, hey, how's this thing going? I know for me, whenever I have a gym buddy, for example, I find myself more in the gym, and I find myself working harder in the gym when I have a gym partner. Right? It's just how it is. So having an accountability partner always helps, even in businesses that I've ran. Like, I was always a lot more productive whenever I had an accountability partner in business. Now, you could also have an action journal. So for those of you who journal, and I would hope all of you journal in some shape or form, but write down one action daily toward your dream and execute it before bed. So for those of you who are tuning in right now, think about what you can do for today that can move you closer to your dream and actually follow through. Just one thing. Okay. Now, if you're getting value, once again, drop a comment. You can put a V for value. I want to make sure you guys are still with me here. And we're about to bring the plane in for a landing. All right. So next, there's so many stories I can tell you of people who have gotten caught up in overthinking, whether it's entrepreneurs who've launched before they were ready to launch, whether it was athletes who took risk on the big stage. You understand? Like Michael Jordan, I remember just seeing him play with the flu, right? And still pushing forward, sick as a dog, and leading his team to a championship, right? It could be creators who started small but grew huge. Some of your favorite creators, it could be YouTubers, podcasters, authors, right? And in terms of like, for me, again, a lot of the things that I've launched over the years, if there's anything that I'm grateful for, is the fact that I let go of this idea of being perfect a very, very long time ago, a very long time ago. And I know people who legit will not like start speaking on a podcast, or they're not putting out content because they don't like the way they look yet. They're on their quote unquote weight loss journey. And I respect it. It's like, you may not want the world to see you like that, but how about if you had the perspective of, I want to show people my transformation. I want to show people like what I overcame. It's like a different way of looking at things. Okay. Like for me, if I look at the work that I put out in the early years, it's like super scrappy, but I'm okay with that because people can see the progression. People can see the evolution. Okay. So it's not about having everything be a 10 out of 10. All right. So I want to challenge you guys to pick one dream you've been sitting on and take action on that dream within the next 24 hours. What's that dream? Whatever it is. Maybe it's to buy that home, and maybe you can start researching things on that home, right? But don't stay researching too long. Take some kind of action. Maybe it's on reaching a certain level in your business and you have to make some phone calls, reach out to some prospects, land some customers, right? Maybe you have to hire that personal trainer because your dream has been to get six-pack abs, whatever it is. But whatever that one dream is, and do something today to take action on that, okay? And once again, for those of you who are ready for that next level, DM me. I'm always happy, to provide coaching, insight, mentorship, all of that stuff. And I offer complimentary coaching sessions for those of you who feel like you can use that extra push. But my hope for you after tuning into today is that you take action, you stop overthinking, and allow yourself to just start building some momentum. Maybe today was a reminder for you, like, hey, I don't have to have it all perfect. Or, hey, like, even if I just take one small step, it's still a step in the right direction. Okay. And remember this, your dreams are not waiting for you to think more. They're waiting for you to do more. Okay. They're not waiting for you to think more. They're waiting for you to do more. So just to wrap up, remember, when it comes to everything that we covered, go back and understand overthinking in the first place. Know that there's a cost to overthinking. And it typically comes down to going through a mindset shift to break out of the overthinking. And you have all the practical tools, whether it's the 2-minute rule, setting deadlines, limiting how much input you take in, right? Having those decision filters, like asking yourself, will this move me closer to my dream? Breaking it down into micro goals, having an accountability partner, or even an action journal. These are all practical tools you can take on today to move the needle with your dreams. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this was super valuable for you. If it was, drop a comment. Once again, like, comment, share, tag, subscribe. Thank you for all of you who share stars or subscribe to my work. It's greatly appreciated. And remember, as I mentioned earlier, you do not have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Breakfast is served. God bless every last one of you. I'll be seeing you all next week. Take care, everyone.